And you're live now.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we're ready.
All right. Supervisors, meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Johnson,
Yeah,
since he's participating remotely, needs to identify the reason and physical address that he's connected from.
The reason is I'm out of town, and my address is 5385 Pearl Drive, Chincoteague, Virginia, 23336.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone else have any additions, deletions, or changes? I have one, and that would be under new business, and that is street design standards, or something with reasonable facsimile. That would be 5B. No one has anything else? I would entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion, or move to approve the agenda as modified.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. It is unanimous. Next is special presentations and appearances. Denise Thompson, owner of Cooper's Cooking and Catering. Come on up and tell us about it.
Hello. My name is Denise Thompson, and I'm located at 131 Bird Street, right around the corner up here. And we specialize, we opened up September 25th was our grand opening. And we specialize in home cooked Southern meals. And we've been very, very, very busy these past couple weeks. I have a few menus. We open up early. We open up 8 o'clock every morning for breakfast. Breakfast is served from 8 to 11. And we close in the evening at 7:30. So we have fried chicken, fish, macaroni and cheese. Everything is made in-house, homemade. Nothing is bought from the store. We bake goods every day, every other day when I get a chance. So if you all get a chance, stop by and visit us. We also do catering. We've been doing a lot of catering here lately. But just a quick story about my journey. I grew up the youngest of 15 kids out of Gordonsville, Cooper's in Gordonsville, and my mom sold dinners out of her house for years. And that's how she supported us, selling to factories, to churches and everything. So over the years, when I was 8 and 9, I had to peel potatoes. I had to, clean chitlins and pig feet. So I said, well, before she died, I was like, I wish you could get a restaurant. So long story short, she passed and I said, well, she didn't do it, her daughter's gonna do it. So me and my siblings got together and it's been a blessing. It's like I said, it's 3 weeks and it's overwhelming of the support we have got from Orange and surrounding counties. And we are the #1 fried chicken competition. And years ago when my mom was living, we won the first 5 years. And then when she passed, we stopped. So we just went back this year. So we was gracious that we did get first place. So it's been a blessing. Like I said, stop by anytime.
Where are you located?
131 Bird Street, right around next to Faye's.
Behind Copy Stop first.
Yep, behind Coffee Stop. So I'm leaving some menus. Thanks for inviting me. Drop in anytime. You'll see me or my partner or my siblings. It's all family there, so just drop in.
Can you eat in as well as take out?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
We eat in and take out as well. And we deliver. We, in Orange, we'll deliver. So we'll get everything.
You qualified that in order. I was about to say, if I call it, no.
Very smart for her to qualify. Very.
So, thanks for inviting me.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad you're doing well.
Yes.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Next is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next is new business. It seems to roll around once a year, but I'm not sure why we have to put it on the agenda, but it is. Appointment for VACO's annual business meeting. Mrs. Simpson.
Not sure that it needs any introduction. As you said, we do this every year, but VACO's annual business meeting is coming up as part of their annual conference next month. And they require appointment of a representative to cast a vote or multiple votes on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors.
I nominate Mr. Crush.
Do you second that?
I'll second that.
Well, I saw him sitting there drooling, so. All right. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Aye, it passes unanimously. All right. Next, I wanted to bring up, we put a lot of work into street design standards a few years ago, and it was well intentioned, but I believe we created a monster. We have a very confusing thing there. We've got 3 different planning directors that have interpreted it 3 different ways. What my suggestion is that we go back basically to the 2014, look at going back to the 2014 road standards with some tweaks and put together a working group of some staff and, more importantly, some professionals such as engineers and surveyors, thank you, to come up with something that is not so restrictive and it's not nearly as cumbersome. Something that is developed out of that is a 5-page plat recordation checklist. And I've done some checking. Virtually no one requires anything like this. Most of them, the one thing, the surveyors know what is required on the plats. And this is just enough to choke a camel. So that is what my request and recommendation would be. I'd like to hear from the other board members, their thoughts, so that we could possibly move forward to this, because this would be a text amendment change, which would need to go to the Planning Commission first, and then back to us for public hearings.
I have also run into several issues with the road standards. You might recall what we have now. There's a standard that changes as you go from a road serving 3 or 4 lots. Then there's another standard for 4 to 6, I think it is, and then there's another standard up to 8, and then there's another standard up to 11. I mean, it's slicing, and in some cases, all we're really doing is adding another foot of width or a deeper ditch. Or I mean, it's really much too restrictive in terms of recognizing an individual situation needs to be addressed. As I recall, if we go back to the 2014, there was a general scoping of what the road had to look like.
Yes.
But it applied to all private roads. It didn't distinguish between how many lots were being served. And so I think that conversation is worth having, especially with the people that are out in the field having to put this in plats that get reviewed and ultimately recorded.
And what is ultimately happening is people that have had approved very minor subdivisions are now not being allowed to do them because of the street standards. And if we go back, do you all remember when we did away with the county ordinance regarding the distance between culverts on the roads? We had a much stricter restriction on the distance between culverts and everything than what VDOT does. And we said, let's just go back. There's been no issues by going with VDOT standards. VDOT also has standards that they require regarding private streets emptying onto the public roads. So I think this is something, right now I have no less than 5 separate individuals in my district that are being held up from doing what they rightfully should be able to do because of our ordinance the way it is.
What time frame do you think we need to move on this?
I think we need to be fairly quick on it because I have one lady that a simple subdivision, the timeframe in the planning department has drawn out such that her price, she had to go back and redo her contract with her builder, and the price went up $50,000. And that's not us looking out for our citizens. So I think we need to get this work group together. I believe we could probably get the work group together and get everything done by our next meeting to send it to the planning commission.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree that I think this is the direction to move in. Fortunately, we had sent another version of this to the Planning Commission. Fortunately, they have not acted on it yet. So we're going to need to, if we decide to go this way, we need to communicate with them before their next meeting that, to hold off and we're going to try something differently. But yeah, I mean, I think that, this thing has been tweaked several times. We're trying to get it right. And sometimes in trying to get it right, you kind of overcomplicate things. So I think going back to a simpler system, I think there is a lot to be said for that.
Good, thank you, sir. All right, is there a consensus on that to go ahead and send it?
Yes, I'll support it.
Okay, yep. All right. Mr. Voorhees, I will get with you as far as getting some staff together to be on this working group, and we'll get this underway as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right, I see no old business. I see no Department Director or Constitutional Officer reports. Mr. Lashley, any county attorney's report?
Just want to report how much I enjoy working.
Thank you, sir. Now, where was
Could you turn that?
Mr. Voorhees, county attorney, county administrator's report. Let's top that one.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that notion, but I did also just want to highlight the fact that we did receive a certificate of occupancy today for the public safety building. And we're pretty excited about that. So we'll be transitioning some of our operations over there over the next several days. And so if you have any trouble getting in touch with some of those departments, understand that they may be between offices, and but that's a good thing. If you need any further information, certainly let me know. But I bumped into some very excited staff members from IT and COFEMs today. They almost knocked me over heading out the door with their boxes. So you were to be congratulated as a board, and I know Kurt is excited to get to this point, and I'm looking forward to sharing this facility with the public. We'll have some sort of an event to do that when it's appropriate, and I know it's going to be a real blessing and opportunity for our staff to occupy that new space.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, since you're remote, I do not want to forget you. We are now at board comment. Do you have anything, sir?
I do not at the moment, no.
Good. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, the General Assembly passed legislation that would allow the implementation of a tax on disposable bags, plastic bags, paper bags, any of the disposables. I would like to consider that. It isn't going to change our general revenue, because the provision for that is all turned back into either providing for cleanup, but given the fact that our tourism is dependent upon a nice looking county, And we've always had people trying to come up with, get people from the CVRJ to do it. And so I'd like to consider that and investigate it and consider it for implementation in Orange County.
Is that something that we should send to the Litter Control Committee or?
I brought it up at the Litter Control Committee and I hit them cold with it. I said I was gonna bring it up tonight, but I'll take it to the Litter Control Committee again. But I think, I mean, there were some people who thought it was really a great idea and others were, okay, you know, they were worried about, because most of this, the implementation revolves on the smaller businesses, or on all businesses.
Right.
The smaller ones might have a little trouble with it, but it isn't something that we get involved in other than accepting the revenue, I guess. You got any more on that, Ted?
Well, I think that's right. There might be a little bit of enforcement's probably not the right angle. It's just communication, maybe, to make sure that the retailers understand it and have someone to go to.
Yeah, I mean,
to talk about it.
anyway, it just seems to me like a way of trying to improve the appearance of the county without taxing our homeowners any further.
Okay, well, if you would take that back to Litter.
I will do that.
Bring us back a little more information, because I do know currently small businesses are really hammered.
And maybe I will also mention to Rose about, okay, let's look at what kind of impact it would be on small business.
Yeah, that's
All right?
very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. White.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have two items. One that we talked about in our work group meeting last week was to get a meeting with VDOT to talk about the Route 3 area and the transportation. I just want to bring that back to the surface and make sure that somebody is taking the lead on getting that scheduled, because as I heard some of the comments from the Planning Commission discussion the other night and then looked further into the situation myself, I think it's something that we really need to bring VDOT in. They're going to be a key player in this. Need to understand the parameters of their involvement, their ideas, and so forth. And I think it's important that gets scheduled as quickly as possible. So,
I know there's been some staff interaction with the applicant on that. Where are we at as far as the board and the planning commission? I know there'd been some talk about a joint meeting, but where are we with that? Anything further as far as a timeline?
I had not initiated scheduling that yet, pending you all's work session on Tuesday and then planning commission meeting on Thursday. And then I understood Mr. Gillespie was gonna kind of take some of that information from both meetings and circulate it to the developers. And so I have not initiated a joint meeting with the planning commission or VDOT at this time.
Okay, it would be my suggestion then that county administrator get with Mr. Gillespie as soon as possible, see where he's at on this, because it is time sensitive from the county perspective, and we have time of year that we're approaching. I don't think there's not a whole lot of dates to work with, but we need to get something scheduled jointly.
Also, in terms of having VDOT come in and explain what their concerns are and you know, what their role in this is and what kind of recommendations they make. In talking to Alan, he said, well, they don't make a decision. They just say, here's their recommendations. But I think we need to know that well in advance and what kind of recommendations we might or might not get, so we don't find ourselves in a situation where we find out about this real late in the process.
And it may be nothing different than what they've been doing all along, and I'd hope to have a little more clarity from our application review committee, but we unfortunately did not get clarity from that. So,
well, and again, it takes on an importance partly because this project is one that's going to last many years.
Outlast all of us.
And, well, yeah, it certainly outlast us. And so how this thing gets phased, I think, is an important thing. And what can be phased with respect to the roads and what makes no sense.
And what triggers a particular phase?
All of that. And so that's why I think it's important that that at least this board get with VDOT and officials and Alan and Mark and a few others.
And how the approval is characterized in terms of whether proffers or anything else.
And we may need to have a work session with VDOT sooner than later.
Yes. That would be my recommendation, is that we try to.
Board, planning commission, and
No,
VDOT,
board and VDOT to start with, just because it'll be easier scheduling. I mean,
We're relatively flexible.
we can meet their schedules. And I would say the earliest date that we can find to do that is.
Okay.
usually
I'll send out an email this evening, or do you want
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
My second item, and actually, we didn't rehearse this, but it relates somewhat to Mr. Frame's item. I've had a number of conversations over the past 3 or 4 weeks about recycling. I'm getting both points of view, as you might guess, and I think we touched on this subject several months ago. I think this board needs some facts as to what it's costing, how it's being done. When I had a discussion with one constituent about the fact that our compactor loads are being transported down, I think somewhere in Richmond, I don't actually know where they're going, where they're being separated and all these kind of things. And his eyes became like full moons. I mean, you're kidding me. And so I think this is something that we need to better understand the facts we're dealing with, any options that we have, which appear to be quite limited, and then begin the process of sort of communicating to our constituents what that environment looks like, and potentially make some decisions about where we should be going with this. Because as I was having a conversation with one person, they said, do you realize the amount of water it takes for the individual homeowners to prepare these plastic jugs and whatever to be recycled, and then they're dumped all in one place and disappear? I mean, something just doesn't seem to have its connected the way it needs to be. So I'd like to see a work session.
I see a lot of cardboard ending up in the compactors, which then ends up in our landfill. And a little more. I have tried to with my articles and stuff like that. In fact, I think I'm working on one right now that tells you it costs $50,000 a year for the landfill that we closed 3 years ago, and it'll continue to cost that for indefinitely. And what the cost of the annual operation of the landfill and waste collection, just as a matter of using it as an example for a $300,000 home, it's $175 a year you're paying for this. I mean, that kind of thing is, I think people need to understand it. But how much we get into the recycle bins and what that costs us or earns us.
Well, apparently it cost us from the last time that Kurt was before us.
Substantial.
It's a substantial cost.
That's right.
And even then, a lot of it ends up in the landfill as opposed to being recycled because
Somebody else's landfill.
Somebody else's landfill, but of course we're paying for that. But apparently the market for a lot of these commodities is just evaporating.
China used to take them all, they're not taking anything anymore.
So my suggestion is that we schedule a work session after staff gets some time to really, examine this and get some facts together so that they can let us better understand the environment that we're operating in.
Yeah, I think last time Kirk was saying, these were the only guys that were on.
They were.
They were the sole source, so.
That's right, and so there aren't a lot of options.
I mean, there's a lot of interest. Citizens want to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think they do.
But we can't respond to them and let them know if is this just feel good or are we actually accomplishing something?
Exactly.
I don't have an answer.
And did you have anything else under your?
That's enough.
Just so you know, I was at the East Orange Brewerton's yesterday evening.
Let me guess.
Yeah. And the same exact conversation came up, the same exact conversation about recycling. The bins get full so quickly, and people are trying to do the right thing, trying to do what they've been told is the right thing. So we definitely need to look at this. So soon as we
Couldn't agree more, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. White. I would just, a quick answer to the commodity issues. It does still make sense to recycle aluminum and cardboard, no question. There are markets for those. Plastics is where we really struggle. Glass is very heavy, and it really depends on your local market as to whether that works. But what I had intended some months ago to be responsive to the inquiries was to have a workshop, on this with information. And in fact, our previous Public Works Director was working on that. We are between Public Works Directors and our Assistant County Administrators really got his focus on trying to get this public safety building closed out. So a little bit strapped on the staff research capacity, but I will try to make that a priority for the board. I know it is something that everyone would like more information on. So.
Very good. Only other thing I have. Oh. Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to chime in. It's a little difficult when you're in a bubble.
Yes, it is, sir.
I wanted to go back to the issue of Wilderness Crossing and the workshops, and this is just an observation. The work session that the Planning Commission had the other evening, it really wasn't a work session. It was sort of a chance for the Wilderness Crossing developers to present a case, kind of explain what they're doing, and then for the Planning Commission to point out some things they don't like about it. And that's all that happened. There was no working to try to come up with a product that is improved or changed or whatever. And as we move forward into these work sessions, I don't think we're going to accomplish anything if we use that model. Every time a planning commissioner pointed something out, the applicant's attorney basically did what attorneys do. Sorry. He defended the application. He defended the application and gave a lot of reasons why they did it that way. And so, I mean, and that's, I can't blame him. I understand that's his job, but it didn't get us off the dime. I don't think anybody leaving that room that night was particularly, satisfied or happy or felt like it had been a particularly useful exercise. I mean, it was probably useful to some degree. You move the ball forward a couple of inches, but I don't think we have enough time to move it ahead a couple of inches. We need to be able to get together and really say, these are some things that are really bothering us, and the applicant needs to fix those things. He needs to change them, needs to address them. And maybe some of them, we finally decide, no, we will take it as it is, but maybe, 75% of what we bring forward, they end up making some changes. There's got to be some kind of, and I'm kind of like Jim when he was talking about the recycling. I don't really have an answer here. I don't have a solution, but we need to have some type of a process that allows us to be more successful at moving the ball forward as opposed to just talking past each other.
Very good points, Mr. Johnson. I fully agree with you. Maybe we can reach out to the applicant, to their attorney, and compare the notes that we had from our last meeting and get them to somewhat come up with a checklist to meet with us to go over and see where we are on those points. Because I think some of those points, they have moved closer to where we need to be, but on other points, I don't believe they have. So we've put, some of us have put even more time in, but we've all put a lot of time and effort into this. So, once again, we're having a lot of work sessions, but I think we may need to have one between us and the applicant to narrow down some of them are discrepancies, some of them are implied discrepancies. I don't think that there's as much there as what it appears sometimes. And on other things, it may be further, but I think we definitely need to have the work session conversation within the board and the, yeah.
And I think the conversations need to take on some additional focus. And I'll give you an example of one. I think we all agreed that in our last conversation about this, that the transportation piece and the road network and what that looked like was a critical piece that needed some focused attention, and we need to work through that with VDOT and ultimately with the applicant, of course, and the planning commission. But that's a piece of work that needs to be designed and understood, and we hopefully get to the point where we have a way forward that everybody understands what that's going to look like. I think we could do the same kind of thing with some other pieces that we talked about. Design standards, similarly, we can handle.
I think that something like them, I think we're probably a whole lot closer than anybody realizes on the design standards. So, and if we take those bullet points and condense it down and focus on those, we are all guilty. I know I am especially guilty. We start spitballing when we're supposed to be talking about one focused thing, and we get off onto 20 other things. So if we can just stay focused on our list and move forward, and just like an elephant, take it one bite at a time, instead of trying to do all of it at once and jumping all over the place. Anything more, Mr. Johnson?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so got all that, Ted?
Yes, sir.
And I know we're setting ourselves up for a lot of work sessions, but
It's a big project.
we need to, yes. I have one more thing under board comment, and it relates to your plastic bags. The reason I said what I did is I was at a food place this morning, and they're not getting their slips for the food tax from the county when they're supposed to be getting them. Commissioner's office sends paper slips to them, telling them how much they owe for the month. They then have to write a check and either put it in the mail or come up to the county. There was a real concern about it. So I called Commissioner and spoke with her. She said, they're absolutely right, and the Postal Service is going to be getting even slower. So they just need to sit down, and I'd like to just make sure that the county administrator can follow up to make sure that they're actually doing this, because I know they get busy like everybody else. There's only about 50 businesses in the county that have this food tax that they have to pay every month, and converting it to electronically. It wasn't an issue of paying the food tax, it was a matter of they're not getting them in a timely fashion. One of the reasons is the Postal Service, and then they're having to go back and spend the time instead of just electronically paying it.
Wasn't this our digital citizen?
Sounds like there's a test case way around here.
Precisely. So that's why,
We weren't talking about digital food places. We were talking about
so that is one reason that I made the phone call when I was there having a very healthy breakfast. And Commissioner said they just hadn't done it, but they absolutely could. So I just want to make sure that the loop gets closed on that.
Thank you for passing that along. I know that we implemented something within the last 60 days to allow citizens to donate to any number of causes, animal shelter, for example. And we sort of consolidated all of this into one web-based drop-down, pick which thing you're donating to. It's, Orange County Parks and Rec Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why we couldn't take that same philosophy to this other tax payment.
And I just wanted to say that the commissioner was very willing
Yeah.
to do that, just had not done it, but I wanted to bring it up. And,
Very good.
So.
A little more work for the IT folks.
Not really. It's something that's in
Oh, it's already in the system.
the system that they have. It's just another thing that they have to create. So.
Mr. Chairman, just a word on that. When you go onto the State Department of Taxation, basically all your business taxes are on that site. And so whatever business taxes you have to pay, you can do it from that one spot. And I would hope that as we develop this, that we do the same thing so we don't have people having to jump around, that all the business taxes at least, because there's litter tax and there's food tax and there's sales tax and meals tax and sales tax and there's a number of different ones. So I would hope we'll make an effort to make this as easy for a particularly small business. I'm not worried about the big business, but the small business with limited staff to be able to go in and do this.
Absolutely, Mr. Johnson. So, and just one more comment regarding all of this. It would be nice to have a very short demonstration for the board of how to do these things at a meeting. I don't know about the rest of the members, but I'm not going to remember a whole lot. If we can get the condensed Reader's Digest version, that would be wonderful, because that way it's easier for us to talk to the constituents and say, yes, this is where you go and this is what you do. Because I've gone on, it was an improvement, but it was an improvement I didn't know about, was our GIS. And I couldn't even help the constituent because I couldn't get onto the thing. So that would be nice to just have a board education, for lack of a better term for it. All right, if there's nothing else on board comment, informational items are there for you. Appointments of boards, commissions, and committees. I see that Mr. Blunt sorry, what does it say there? I'm trying to read
Yes,
that. Something else at the same time.
David Blunt with the TJPDC regarding the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board. He is requesting the board's consideration to appoint their representative as well as an alternate, sorry.
Did I say, am I able to bypass that? Because I'm not sure who we're going to make the alternate, but I do know our obvious nominee for our main representative, Mr. White.
Mr. Ward, I think that was our intent. I thought we'd already
Yes.
done it, but okay.
Yes.
And I think the alternate is also in the room,
Oh,
dressed
there
in
she
black,
is.
at least partially in black. So that would be my motion or recommendation, however you.
I'll second that.
Okay.
However this is
And
phrased.
just for officialness, that would be the county administrator, and I'm not sure exactly where we're at right now, but assistant. Glenda Bradley. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously.
Before you move on from appointments, if Mr. Johnson is interested, Bob McConnell would like to be reappointed to the Economic Development Authority, and I believe that's the only other appointment at this time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was my intention to appoint Bob McConnell to another term on the EDA.
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
One other thing, Cliff Barnes has just resigned from the community service, Rappahannock Rapidan Community Services Board. Does anybody else have anybody who's interested? I will pursue somebody.
That was a short-lived.
Well, he got a job opportunity
Okay.
that took him out of the area, so.
Okay, not at this time, I don't. Anybody else?
Okay, I will look for, I'll also be looking for somebody for the community criminal justice board.
Okay, very good. That's it for appointments. Calendar, do we have anything we need to schedule? Do not see anything.
No, sir, not at this time.
No questions on the calendar. We shall go ahead and move into our public hearings. And the first one is the proposed abandonment of a road. And who is presenting that? I'm still getting used to this name there today.
I will take that one.
Okay, Mrs. Simpson. And that's Route 730 Madison Run Drive.
Yes, Route 730 Madison Run Drive. We received a request a month or so, 2 months ago, I guess, from VDOT for the board to consider abandoning a portion of Route 730 Madison Run Drive. It is in District 1. I want to note that this portion, or the subject portion of Route 730, does not physically exist. It is not being maintained by VDOT. For all intents and purposes, VDOT abandoned it decades ago. They are just cleaning up items on their missing inventory list and looking for the formal resolution by the local governing body to make that abandonment more formalized. We did do the 30-day public hearing advertisement in the newspaper, as well as the antiquated posting of the public notice on the front door of the courthouse. So in your packet, there is a GIS description and a line sketch provided by VDOT just for reference. But the action this evening following the public hearing would be to consider the resolution to formalize the abandonment.
Any other discussion, questions?
Did we ever determine whether or not there's a right of way, or is it a prescriptive easement, or what did VDOT control, own, think they owned? I mean, is there really nothing other than a notion?
At this point, from what Mr. Saunders said, it's a notion. They did not go through a legal hoop that they're required to go through.
So there's nothing in the courthouse that says they've got a right of way.
Well, that was really my question. Is there some follow-up that needs to take place either in the circuit court filings or somewhere else, or is this just everybody's sort of nodding their head saying it no longer exists?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there is nothing. It is just a clerical requirement of our fine Commonwealth.
That was my understanding as well. They've got this list of roads that they're trying to get off the list, and nothing besides putting it on the list that really.
And that's the only thing that exists.
Okay, so I
It
mean,
just wasn't completed when some of the residencies were closed. Alan indicated that some of that work wasn't being done when staff was reduced, and now they're kind of getting back into that cleanup effort.
yeah, but I think the Jim's point is, if there is somewhere on a deed that says there's a right of way, and somebody wants to use that land for something else, that could create problems downstream. Not that I would object to removing it, but it just make sure we don't leave a problem that will take and bug somebody else downstream.
And that's exactly my concern. Is there a step that we need to?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding from what Alan told us was this is purely 100%. They need a slip of paper in their file showing that we asked this. This road being as old as it was, almost certainly all VDOT ever had was a prescriptive easement. So when they stopped using it and it's been abandoned for all these years, that, and Tom, you you can correct me on this, but you know, after a certain length of time, prescriptive easements go away like a puff of smoke. So I doubt that VDOT ever had any right of way on this. That's the way it is with most of the county roads. They don't have
That was my
right
understanding.
away.
There's nothing there but a piece of paper.
Okay. In that case, we will open the public hearing. Ms. Simpson, do you have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, no one has signed up and you did not receive any written comments either.
Okay. Close the public hearing. Then we need to consider the attached resolutions for that. Is there a motion?
I move we adopt it as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Is that acceptable or do we need a roll
A
call?
roll call vote for a resolution.
Okay.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall is absent, and Mr. White.
Aye.
4-0.
Very good. Thank you. All right, the next public hearing we have is a proposed supplemental budget appropriation regarding the school system. Ms. Bradley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Yes, this public hearing is required due to the fact that the requested budget amendments are total over 1% of our consolidated and approved budget. Included in the amendments is about 1.2 million in reappropriations from FY21. There's about 700,000 for the purchase of buses, which we did not include in the FY22 budget. In addition, there's a $300,000 lighting project and about 140,000 in an increase for their insurance proceeds for the employer share, which we increased from 5% at budget time to 9% at the current time. And the school administration did come over and meet with the finance committee about that. I think it was in May that we met and agreed to that plan for the reappropriation of the 1.2 million. As you know, the auditors have not come yet for FY21. They'll be here next week. And so I put language in the resolution that would just say we need to confirm that the funds are available for sure with in the audited financial statements before they can be spent. In addition to that, the schools have requested an appropriation for their ARPA funds, and that totals about 5.5 million. It's working a little differently for the schools than it is for the county in that it appears that they'll be running through the state and they're on a reimbursement basis instead of receiving the money up front. But they do have a similar time to spend the funds. It's about 2 years, and I think their final reporting has to be done about a quarter before our final date because they do have to report it first through the state.
Any questions from Ms. Bradley?
On the ARPA funds, do we have a sense of how they're going to apply those monies? I didn't see any detail on that. Maybe I missed it, but or is that something that's still under development?
In his, attached to his memo, I think was a sheet that kind of detailed what the two different tranches of ARPA funds could be used for or where they originated, but there wasn't really a lot of detail about the local use of those funds.
Basically, it says emergency relief.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a wide open door.
yeah,
And
okay.
I did talk some to Gary about, the fact that we've set up a separate special revenue fund for our ARPA proceeds so that it just helps us to account for it a little cleaner. So far, even with FY '21, the CARES Act money that they received too, they run it through their operating fund, the school operating fund. But he is separating those out with a project code. But we're just gonna need to remember, you know, as we go years down the road in the budgeting process, that we're gonna need to account for the fact that that we allow for those ARPA funds that have been included.
Well, I guess that's one of my concerns, is that we don't, you know, lose track of these such that they, you know, sort of become vapor
Right.
and end up in the vapor sphere without us really. And my other concern is that we did have some conversation, preliminary, admittedly, with the schools about trying to allocate some of these monies toward some you know, initiatives that we're all interested in and concerned about. Career tech being one of those, and as well as others. And without some you know, at least first order description of where those monies go, I'm concerned that we don't achieve that goal of applying them toward a bigger initiative. And so I'm fine with appropriating the monies. It's just that I think we need a
Well, and there is no requirement to appropriate them tonight. I was trying to get, you know, through the public hearing and package the two together so that we wouldn't have to go through the process more than once, but.
And I'm fine with that. I guess my caveat is that there's still a lot of work to be done to actually allocate and prioritize how those funds get used.
What, the concern of creating a new operating expense line that will go on beyond the expenditure of ARPA funds. In other words, we've created a new service or a new capability or something like that, we've been doing this now for 3 years. Oops, we finished up with ARPA funds. We need to get that now from the county.
And maybe that's really the point, that we need to develop either a policy or at least a procedure that accounts for these funds such that we will have them identified. We know where they went. We know whether it's one-time expenditures or an ongoing mortgage that we've created. And I think we need to get a couple of levels of detail below where we are now in order to really understand where those monies are going.
We've had other grants that we've taken, you know, like the grants for fire and rescue and things like that. But it says, okay, you got to hire 3 people. Well, great. But when that grant runs out, you're obligated to keep those 3 people.
Exactly. Right. So I think it maybe the responsibility falls to you to come back to us at some point for discussion about how do we make sure that there's visibility into these monies, that we can track them.
Right, and he, you know, like I said, I did have multiple conversations with Gary about their ability to, you know, corral those expenditures, because he's gonna need to for reporting purposes, and we're gonna need it when we go to look at budget and, you know, historical information and trends.
So can it just be captured in a different line item, whatever that.
Right, he
It
says
has-
he's got
has a
a
sunset.
project codes assigned, so we'll be able to identify them. But I don't know, I don't have, you know, enough information to say specifically that there's not a situation like Mr. Frame is describing where, you know, we'll have something that's gotta be funded or.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem just approving the 21 carryover, since there's no critical time frame on this other 5 million. And understand what even if we don't have specific items they're gonna spend it on, what their philosophy for using it would be, I would feel a little more comfortable with.
So you're saying not do the appropriation tonight?
I would do it just for the fiscal 21 carryover.
Let me ask a question. Would would that amount, would the CARES Act money or the ARP money, would that trigger another 1% public hearing, in your view?
No, I think we're having the public hearing once you open it. We can have the public hearing tonight and then, you can adopt the appropriation anytime after that.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'd be happy to get Gary to, and come back next meeting or the
I'm okay with
next.
that.
and-
Okay, yeah.
And we'll try to get a little more detail before you actually appropriate it.
Okay, any further questions for Linda? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Then I would move that we would, oh no, we haven't a public hearing yet.
Open the public hearing, Ms. Simpson?
No, sir, we don't have any speakers signed up.
And we didn't receive them.
No, sir, we did not receive written comment.
Close the public hearing. Entertain a motion.
I would move that we appropriate the 1.2 million remaining operating funds for fiscal '21.
And Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, the resolution that's contained in your packet would be adopted with the table modified by Ms. Bradley to only include the reappropriation of the FY 21.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Allison. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Ms. Simpson? Roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
And Mr. Marshall is absent, passes 4-0.
Very good. All right. Our next public hearing is a proposed ordinance to require radon-resistant new construction. Who is?
I'll take that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So this item came forward at the request of our building official to adopt the local option section of the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code that pertains to radon-resistant construction. As the board members know, Orange County does lie in the portion of the Commonwealth that presents some additional risk to
The highest
occupants
risk in the state.
for radon, which comes from decomposing stone, rock that's radioactive and is a leading contributor to lung cancer. So accordingly, the Building Code Council forwarded this option, adopted this option that is something that localities can require. As we mentioned at the meeting where we discussed advertising this, our building official and staff are already requiring this. And so I did look into this a little bit. I think what we had is some lack of communication and handoff issues between my predecessor and now, where I think maybe there was some intent to move this forward to the board. It didn't quite happen. And so we're here trying to make sure that we do have it in place officially. It is a best practice, and it's certainly something that would be helpful to homeowners to have this built, from the beginning rather than have to come back and retrofit. And so it is before you for consideration.
Okay. Any questions for the county administrator or any discussion? That's something we should have had on the books already.
Yeah.
All right. Open public hearing. Anyone signed up? Ms. Simpson?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, and we did not receive any written comments.
Close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Then this one, just need to be roll calls or all?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall's absent, and Mr. Frame.
Aye.
4-0.
Very good. Our next item is public input on the decennial redistricting. Do we have anyone signed up to address the board?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, we did not have anyone signed up.
Received no emails with anybody desiring to.
No, sir.
Correct. All right, in that case, I would entertain, we have nothing to close session.
No,
So, okay, I would entertain one more.
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good
All
evening.
right.